Hello everyone, and welcome to 15 of English 120. Alright guys, we're getting really near the end. This week we're going to be working on drafting our research paper. You'll be reading in Valley of the Moon, Book 3, Chapters 6 through 10. You'll also be referring to the Bedford Researcher Chapters 14, which is on drafting, and Chapter 15, which is on using sources effectively. Your assignment will be to draft your research paper, and will be due at the end of the week. So the first thing you want to think about when you're writing your research paper and really thinking about structuring it, you've already thought about your thesis, right, which is the most important part of your paper. It's what you're going to be arguing throughout your paper. Now you want to think about how will you construct an introduction about it. In your introduction, you want to look at pages 237 to 240 in the Bedford Researcher. On these pages, there's a lot of wonderful information about how to think through, your writing your introduction, and there's also some sample introductions. But the one thing you always have to have within your introduction is you need to have your thesis needs to be introduced. And for the length of your research paper, your introduction should be 1 to 2 paragraphs long. You also want to think about how will you grab the reader's attention. When you begin, you want to start off by hooking the reader. You can start off by making a surprising statement. You can ask the reader a question. You can tell a little story, right, that's related to your topic. You can provide a historical account, like maybe there's a historical date that you want to outline, or you want to maybe lead with a quotation. And as always, you always get the first and last word, so if you are leading with a quotation, you want to introduce that quotation with an attribution and then include the quotation. But after you have your hook introduced, then you want to give the background about your topic. You've done some of this work already in your prospectus. If you're talking about, if your thesis is about how unions have changed over the last 100 years, you might want to give the history of unions before you start talking about it, and the history of not how that change happened, but just the history of what's been going on with unions over the last 100 years, okay? Then, when you introduce your thesis statement, the reader will really understand what you are talking about. The topic history is also where you're going to define any terms we might not already know about your topic. It's really important that it's clear to the reader, number one, that you've grabbed the reader's attention. Number two, you've given us the information about the topic. Number three, you've established your ethos. Who are you and why should we listen to you about this topic? It could be as simple as, I recently read Jack London's The Valley of the Moon and noticed that there was a lot of information about unions in this novel. And so I became interested in this topic. That would establish ethos in your paper. Then you want to set up your thesis statement. Your thesis statement should be something that you're arguing, and as we talked about in the last couple of weeks, your thesis should not just state your thesis. You should do one of 3 things. The first thing you can do is you can call your reader to action, right? Maybe you want them to take action by arguing this particular thesis. Or you can ask readers to change their attitudes or beliefs about something. Or you can ask readers to learn something new. But you should be able to identify what that is, and when the peer review happens of your paper, the person who reviews your paper will need to tell us which one of those things your thesis statement is doing. Once you have your introduction thought through, then you want to think of, okay, those subtopics you were thinking about. What are those subtopics you wanted to talk about? Now you want to think about introducing those subtopics. You're going to use your outline to draft your document and translate that bulleted list of topics into full sentences. Don't be afraid at this point to change the order of your ideas if you need to do so while you're drafting. You want to draft effective paragraphs by focusing on a central idea. Paragraphs should have a topic sentence in which you make an assertion, offer an observation, or you ask a question. Then you want to follow a pattern in your paragraph. Support the points you're making by supporting it with evidence from a source, and introduce your source by naming the author, establishing his or her authority on the topic, and using attributions such as according to, claimed, expressed, reported, acknowledged, commented, inquired, said, stated, wrote, pointed out. Always contextualize your quotation before and after the quotation. The final sentence should draw a conclusion based on the evidence provided that supports the essay's thesis statement. You want to do this for each of your body paragraphs. Now, some of your subtopics may take more than one body paragraph to talk about. If that's the case, then make this process flow through 2 paragraphs. Here's an example of a body paragraph. It's by no means a perfect example, but the central idea of the paragraph follows an initial question. Given the potential costs in justice and national security, why hire contractors at all? So that's the question. Ironically, perhaps the most cited reason for using private contractors is that using these corporations saves the taxpayer money, since the government can hire them on an as-needed basis. It does not have to pay for contractors' training, health care, or pensions. The third and fourth sentences use evidence from a source to show the real cost of hiring contractors. The author of the evidence is introduced, and her authority as a source is confirmed by mentioning she is a professor at Middlebury College. The quote is contextualized before and after the quotations. So you see, Professor Allison Stranger at Middlebury College challenges this notion in her 2009 book, One Nation Under Contract, when she points out that nearly all private contractors previously served in the military, meaning that many of them are receiving pension payments anyway. Stranger writes that the federal government is effectively paying double or triple the daily rate for their services. The final sentence draws a conclusion that supports the essay's thesis statement. Therefore, the Department of Defense would actually save taxpayers money by reversing the trend on privatization. Sorry, I can't say that word apparently. So, if you look at this paragraph more closely, you'll see that there are ways you can improve this. For one thing, there's only one expert given. The data from her book is given as a way to support the statement that the paragraph is making. A way to strengthen this paragraph would be to use a second person to support with evidence of the quotation, or to use statistics. Maybe if we knew exactly how much money is being spent on private contractors, then it would be much more effective. That would be logos, using logos. Or using a second example from another expert would really strengthen this paragraph. Between all of your body paragraphs, you want to think about transitions, and also between ideas within single paragraphs. Transitions are words and phrases such as however and on the other hand that show the relationship between paragraphs and sentences. Transitions help readers understand how one sentence builds on another and how a new paragraph is related to one before it. By signaling these relationships, they help readers anticipate how the information and ideas that are about to be read are related to the information and ideas they've just read. So one thing I do when I'm writing a longer paper is I print out a list of these particular transitional words and put it above my writing desk. It's really great to have a cheat sheet like this to help you transition ideas, because essentially what you're doing, once you have your subtopics and you have your data collected to support those subtopics, you're going to have to write prose that kind of puts all that information together, and you need words as a way to glue them together to make them flow from one thought to the next. So if you're giving information in a sequence, you want to look at the words like furthermore, or in addition, or first, second, third. If you want to show contrast between things, you'll use words like however, or on the other hand. Or if you want to elaborate on something, you'll say for example, or indeed. To signal a concession, you'll say of course, or I admit that. To compare something, you'll say similarly, or in the same manner, or as in. To introduce a conclusion, you'll say as a result, as a consequence, therefore. These are great words to use, and really make sure that you're using them within your paper. Finally, when you end drafting your paper, you're going to be writing a conclusion. The conclusion is the final place where you get to talk to the reader about your topic. If you look on pages 242 to 244 in the Bedford Researcher, there's great information about writing your conclusion. At minimum, your conclusion should summarize the main points that you've made in your paper and tell us how these points support or prove your thesis. Remember, your conclusion is your last chance to leave an impression on your reader, and therefore it gives you a final opportunity to influence your readers. One of the ways that you want to think about it after you restate the main points that you've made in your essay, including the subtopics and the evidence you've provided, and you've shown how you've proved your thesis, it's a good idea to really bring it all together. You can offer additional analysis, you can speculate about the future, you can close with a quotation, once again remembering that you always get the last word. You can close with a story, you can close with a question, or you can call your readers to action, especially if you have a thesis that's asking readers to be called to action. And then finally, you can link back to your introduction. So maybe if your introduction used a quotation, you want to end with a related quotation. This is a really good way of bookending your paper. It's a really good way to show flow in your paper. If your introduction used a story, maybe extend that story and retell it in the end with a different ending. If your introduction asks a question, answer the question and restate the answer, or ask a new question. If your introduction defined a problem, then you can provide a solution to the problem, restate the problem, or suggest that readers need to move on to a new problem. One of the things you're going to be doing throughout your paper is using sources effectively. Remember, you use sources to introduce an idea or argument, to contrast ideas or arguments, to provide evidence for your argument, and to align your argument with an authority, or to define a concept, illustrate a process, or clarify a statement. You're going to use attributions to identify your source. Remember these on page 252, and you might also want to print out this list and put it above your writing desk. You want to always cite your sources by providing the last name of the author, if not already stated, and the page number in parentheses after the end of the quotation. Here's an example of what it should look like. Pamela Koch argues education reform is the best solution for fixing our public schools. You'll notice the page 22 is emphasized, is put in parentheses after the quotation. Choose your quotes wisely. Sometimes you'll require a partial quote, which is when you use only part of a sentence or even a single word. All words that are quoted are in quotation marks. The source information is included at the end of the sentence. Maybe you want to use complete quotations, one or more complete sentences, and it's cited just the same as a partial. Or maybe you have a longer extended quotation. That's called a block quotation. They're indented 1 inch from the left margin. You only indent block quotations if there are more than 4 typed lines of text. You do not need quotation marks with a block quotation. You do cite the source, just last name and page number in parentheses. You shouldn't use more than 1 or 2 block quotations in a paper of this size. Whenever you use a quotation in your draft, you'll need to first introduce the quotation, including the person who's speaking, right? If you're using a source, if you're using an expert, show us how they have an expertise in your area. You want to include the quotation, partial, complete, or block. See page 253 for examples, and then explain to the reader what the quotation means in regards to the point that you're making in your paper. See examples on page 256 for details on how to integrate quotations into your draft. You'll also need to include a works cited page. This is a crucial part of your research project. If you are having trouble creating a works cited page, please come see me or talk to me during my office hours. There is a sample works cited page in the Bedford Researcher. It's found on page 361. You are expected to understand how to do MLA citations. If you do not know how to do this, please come see me in my office hours. Alright guys, so your research paper draft is going to be due on the 13th. It's going to be an argumentative research paper that explores the topic you presented in your project topic form and your prospectus. Your topic must be arguable and related to a topic or theme found in the Valley of the Moon. Format requirements: 6 to 8 double-spaced pages, Times New Roman 12-point font. You must use Times New Roman 12-point font, and your paper must be in MLA format. That means that you need to look at the example on page 357 in the Bedford Researcher, which will show you exactly how to lay out your paper. That includes a left-hand header that has the writer's name, instructor's name, course, and date. A right-hand header that has the last name and the page number of the author, and that needs to be on every single page, and it needs to be in the header. There should be a 1-inch margin all the way around the page, and that's the standard format for an MLA formatted paper. Also, you will be using in-text citations. So the overall requirements for this paper: your paper must be at least it must use at least 6 academic sources that are referred to using MLA in-text citations and that are listed on a works cited page at the end of your paper. By academic sources, I mean authored sources. You may also use the Valley of the Moon as your 7th source. In fact, it's highly encouraged. But you need 6 other sources that you are referring to in your paper. Your paper must also use ethos, which is how you establish someone's background and understanding of a topic, their lack of bias. Pathos, which is when you appeal to emotion. It's when you give a human example about something. And logos, which is logic, which are the facts and figures about something. Use all 3 of these to argue your thesis. Your paper must have an introduction, where you introduce your topic, and you have a focus thesis that clearly states the topic you're writing about and the position that you're arguing about this topic. Your paper must contain several body paragraphs that introduce subtopics that are proven with evidence, and your paper must have a conclusion where you clearly state how you have proven your thesis and communicate the purpose of your paper. That's it for the research paper. Please let me know if you have any questions. We're going to be talking about the Valley of the Moon, Book 3, Chapters 6 through 10 this week. I have a series, there's a series of questions that are posted here. Please answer them and then finally develop one critical question about these chapters that your peers can respond to. As always, you need to post your initial post by Saturday at 11:59 p.m. and you must respond to at least 3 of your peers' posts for full credit. There is no research journal this week. You'll be happy to know because you'll be busy writing your research papers. And I thought I would go over briefly the rest of English 120. You are almost done, you guys. So in week 16, which is next week, you're going to be reading Book 3, Chapters 11 through 17 in the Valley of the Moon. The discussion forum will be a peer review, so be ready for that. It'll be at the beginning of the week. Your research and reading journal will be on these chapters of the Valley of the Moon, and the only assignment that will be due is your peer review. Your final weeks will be week 17. We will read to the end of the Valley of the Moon, and I will give a brief lecture on the Valley of the Moon. Then you will have the following deadlines. You need to turn in your revised research paper by May 27th. Your comp class post-test, remember this is not graded, but you are required to complete it, will also be due on May 27th. And the Valley of the Moon final, which will be posted during week 17 will also be due at the end of the week. Alright guys, that's it. Please let me know if you have any questions. I look forward to seeing you online.